Hey everybody, time for an Oliver video. It's spring 2016. It's actually Easter Sunday today. But now the festivities are winding down. I'm going to take a little bit of time and pull the radiator out on the old Oliver. Get ready to take it someplace to get it repaired this week, hopefully. Why, you might ask? Well, we were burning some brush a couple of weeks ago, and I was using the Oliver to push the brush pile. And the stick popped up over the top of the loader and ended up going right in through here, broke the fiberglass grill right here, and poked a hole in the radiator. Not good. What really steams my bean is that I was, I don't know, lazy or for whatever reason. Last time I got done working on the Oliver, I didn't put this big old grill back on. And if I had this on, probably never would have had this catastrophe of busting out the radiator. And I guess I'll have to make sure I put that back on this time for sure. Alright, so take this front grill, this whole assembly off. You're going to loosen these bolts, but there are nuts on the backside that just turn when you try and turn those. So you're going to be able to get a wrench on the inside there. So there's 4 screws that take this fiberglass grill off, and then behind that there's what's left of this screen is held by this little metal frame here. It's like sheet metal screws that hold this in. Anyways, you can see this is where it is leaking. The stick must have hit here hard enough to bust the tube and then kind of rode up and messed up a bunch of these fins. So, I'm not sure what the deal's going to be there. Alright, so now I can get a wrench on the inside here to hold these nuts. And bolt this. Actually, this is loose enough I can actually hold them with my finger. Yeah, maybe spoke too soon? No, maybe not. Bottom bolts appear to thread into the frame or the bracket. 1.5-inch wrench. Oops, forgot to turn the camera back on. Yeah, so I just took out this last bolt, so now this whole assembly comes off. What holds the radiator in there, I wonder. Well, alright, I got the bolts on the side here off, and then there's a bolt here missing, and then there was a bolt here. These bolts thread right into the frame assembly of the radiator, it appears. And it also acts as, looks like it appears to act as the shroud for the fan. So this whole thing is actually moving now. Gonna have to lift the hood up high enough to clear the front. And actually, I gotta undo the hose up on the top there anyway. So I'm gonna take the hood off. Well, that's a stinker. You can't pull the bottom of the radiator out this way because the darn hydraulic pump's in the way. I'm gonna need a couple of big screwdrivers to try and pry those hoses off. Now it's almost like there's this dog leg right here fitting. So there's a flex collar that comes down to the top of this metal dog leg right here. And then that goes over into the flex collar that goes to the base of the radiator. And then the bottom of this dog leg has I don't know what that is. Another hose going over somewhere? Oh. I wonder if that's some kind of a cooling line or something for the transmission. Don't know. Alright. All I know is that I think if I flex this forward far enough, I think I can pop it out. At least I'm hoping. If I can avoid having to move that hydraulic pump out of the way, that'd be great. There we go. That's mostly just rusty water. I just pull forward on the radiator, and the hose on the top that I had already clamped just popped right out, so that's easy enough. Now, up. Ah, fan shroud is catching on the fan. That's my neighbor on his four-wheeler. It's a 700cc fuel-injected beast. Aftermarket exhaust. Alright, turns out I just had to rotate the fan blade just right. And what happens when you do that is it clears enough so you can tilt this. What somebody did was they, for lack of a better term, modified this fan shroud on the back here by cutting a big old hole in the bottom. You'll see it when I get it out. Because they were probably having the same problem I was just having getting this out. There you go. So you can see there's a big, well, I could see that was done with a torch. That's what they did to the fan shroud on this pig. Well, it's out. Alright, so not much of a radiator guy, but I'm assuming that if I wanted to buy a new radiator, these are the numbers I would need. It looks like it's I can't quite make that out. 5A6194 Modine L054. And up in this corner we've got the badge. And it looks like that's just nothing there. 974 MD. Alright, well, that's it for today. Last thing I did was I put my exhaust stack and my air cleaner breather back in place because we got rain moving in, and I don't want rain getting on in there. I'll play around online tonight and look at what the new radiators cost for this thing, but I got a feeling that I'm probably going to be better off going to a radiator shop and having them, I think they call it recore, this thing. I think there's a way that they can actually bypass the damaged tube and still make this radiator work. Alright. Hey everybody, it's been a week since I took the radiator out of the Oliver. I took it to a radiator shop in Woodstock, Connecticut. The gentleman's been in business a long time doing radiator service, and he's one of the true radiator repair guys around that's still actually doing the work right there in the shop. And he put it in the test tank. He cleaned it up and put it in the test tank, and was able to show me where the tubes were damaged. He tried soldering them to effect a repair. He tried bypassing one of the tubes and ended up not being able to repair it. So at that point I was faced with either the choice of having this radiator recored or buying a brand new replacement radiator. Now the brand new replacement radiators that I found online were typically around $575, $600, and those were the cheapest ones. And well, quite frankly, that would be a cheap replacement radiator, probably a cheaper quality. Several people online that I had seen talk about radiators were really quick to point out that they strongly believe it's better to recore your older radiator than it is to buy one of these cheap new ones, because they believe the cheap new ones, many of them might be imports, very poor quality, and that the quality of the old parts, if they're in good condition that can be reused, would be better served with a new core. And this gentleman who owns a radiator shop, he agreed and quoted me a price, total parts, labor, everything, $525. And I've got a brand new core. And he also wanted to point out, he showed me that he buys all of his radiator cores from Maine Radiator, and that they're made here in the USA. They're not a cheap import core. So let me, I got the radiator right here. Let me reposition the camera, and I'll give you a quick rundown. So it looks really like brand spanking new radiator now, because he painted everything up after he did everything. You know, this whole shroud right here is all still original. You can even see this, where it was cut out with the torch. On the top here, this top tank has this big dent in it, and he didn't bang out the dents on the top here because he was worried about, he didn't realize that this bump right here, which is in the radiator by design, because this radiator must be used on other models where there's a steering shaft or something that must go through here. So he didn't realize that it didn't make a difference. There's bird poop on here on my brand new radiator. Anyways, so he was worried about interfering with this, so he left this alone, and I'm fine with that. So let me turn this around. So for those of you who don't know the anatomy of one of these radiators and what recoring actually means, let me just take a moment to explain that. So essentially the radiator consists of, typically consists of what they call a bottom tank, which is this little section down here, which in this case is made out of brass, or yeah, I think brass. And then this up here is the top tank, which is also brass. And then this area from here to here, which consists of all of these little thin tubes with the thin fins, this is the core. And then in this particular radiator, the design is such that there are multiple rows of tubes going back, and they are staggered, so that the air flows through and it hits different, you know, it works its way through there and it hits a whole bunch of different tubes. So these tubes are very, very thin, and over time they wear out. So what happens is when you go to resolder them, if they're really old, you can have a real hard time getting them to hot enough for the solder to stick without them just completely disintegrating. So my radiator had, my original core had a big section over here that was damaged from the branch, but then there was also an old dent up here that was leaking. And then also where all of these tubes go down into the bottom plate on the original core, there were little tiny bubbles forming there, so there was obviously a problem there also. So anyways, that's why we ended up getting it recored. So this whole tank right here actually solders in right here to the top of the new core. So you have to unsolder this tank and put it on the new core. And then of course these brackets right here were originally spot welded to the tank, and what he did was he had to grind those welds, get that off, and then he resoldered these on. And then on the side here where the mounting threaded holes were, there was a bolt broken off in one of the holes. He took that out for me while he had it all there, and, you know, easy to work with. So now I'm going to put this in, and should be good to go. And you know, I don't even think I was really having an overheating problem anyways, but this is certainly going to be a lot more efficient than it was. All right, well, I want to try and get as much of the coolant, or mostly water, that's left in the system out before I put this back together, so that when I put in the new antifreeze and water mixture, it'll pretty much be all new. So I got my compressor here, and I'm going to try and force some air into the system and see if I can't get some more water to come out of the block. There's also an auxiliary cooler for the Torque-O-Matic transmission there. It's an oil cooler, but it's basically also got coolant flowing through it. And so that's with this pipe that comes off the dog leg on the bottom, it goes to that. It comes back on the other side over there. So, valve over here that I've got open. First I'll try closing that valve and just seeing if I force air in the top here, what happens. Yeah, a little bit comes out. See if I get a rag and wrap around there. Probably even make a better seal than what I've got. That's not working so well. I know I'm not getting any of the water out of those cooler lines this way. Let me try and... There's a petcock type of valve on the side there that I can actually open up. Block this off and try to force air in that. That's better. I think that's good enough. If I really wanted to get picky about it, I could get my shop vac out here and put the hose on here and suck the water out that way, but I'm let's see. This actually does, this kind of turns up here and goes up pretty high. I wonder if there's a low point drain of the cooling system on this that I missed. In reality, I think this little plug right here, this threaded plug, would be your low point drain. So, because the water jet gets up high here on the engine, so this is actually quite a bit below this, even though it's not below the engine block. So, I'm satisfied. Well, today's April 8th, and I decided I'm going to finish putting the radiator back in. We had some snow come in just a few days ago. This was all snow cover, and then warmed up, and we had some rain move in and melted all the snow, and we're back to what it looked like last month, which was kind of weird for this time of year in New England. Well, anyways, the auto parts store set me up with a little scrap of, cut me a little piece of 1.5 inch radiator hose, so I can replace this piece that's missing in the bottom here, and that's all fine and dandy. But I've got another problem here pertaining to these mounting points on the side of the radiator. Okay, so the brackets on the side of the radiator here, they actually were spot welded to the upper and lower tank, and when he put the new core in, what he ended up having to do was solder these back on, and he did his best to try and get the position just right, but it was almost impossible to get it exactly the way it needed to be without actually having this piece right here to line it up. And the problem is this piece right here is actually welded to the frame of the tractor right down there. So the problem I have right now is that that hole lines up, this one doesn't, and neither does that one. Now one of these, I think it might have been this one here, had a broken off bolt in it. So I know all the bolts weren't in here to begin with, but I'd like to try and get as many in as I can. So I figure the best remedy I can think of for this situation, without getting too crazy with what I end up doing here, would be to actually just elongate this hole right here so that I can get the bolt in. I'll probably put a bolt here and a bolt. Well, this bolt actually goes through, I think, yeah, it goes through the hood up here. In other words, this top hole right here, the bolt goes through the hood, and then through this, and then into the radiator. That one, like I said, I think I can get that one in. I might have to, I'll probably just elongate that hole a little bit. But this one here is way off. Yeah, probably about 1/8 of an inch. Ones on this side don't look as bad.